as I say, your pension from the bank is safe enough.
Well, I'm not so sure. A couple of weeks ago, I read where my old bank had sacked their finance director.
What for?
Well, last year he invested £3 billion in subprime mortgages, lost the lot, naturally.
Well, that's got nothing to do with your pension,
Well,
does it?
well, because they made him take early retirement, and they'd given him a pension of £500,000 a year as compensation.
Compensation for what?
Well, for losing them £3 billion. And he's only 38, so if he lives to be 80, they'll end up paying him £21 million. Now, that money's got to come from somewhere. It most likely will be my pension.
Well, it's a possibility, I suppose.
Well, I don't see why they have to give him all that money at all.
Oh, well, it would have been in his contract. They had to do that to get somebody as clever as him to take the job in the first place.
Well, he didn't turn out all that clever if he lost them £3 billion.
But he was cleverer than you, Leslie, because he's got the pension and you haven't.
That's true, I suppose.
But what about the rest of us? Have we been saving? Is the Pope a Muslim? According to the Office for National Statistics, household savings have actually gone negative for the first time for half a century. Well, with house prices booming and the stock market climbing, why save when you can invest instead? Exactly.
And in any case, according to the paradox of thrift, money tied up in savings is wasted when it could be out there earning more money. So why not make your money work for you? Try your hand at a little investment. It certainly worked for this happy senior citizen.
$62 billion would mean nearly 8 million years' worth of our weekly state pension. And a hell of a queue at the post office. So what can you do instead? Well, we took advantage of the boom in easy credit to borrow more and more money.
And here they come now, led by the massed ranks of iPod players. Behind them, in perfect step, the 52-inch plasma screen purchasers, proud heads held high, followed by the courageous men and women of Bid Up TV, and in their wake, a woman with a new pair of trainers. Heads turn now as they pass by the Queen and salute. She responds as only Her Majesty can by having another go on her Wii Sports.
With credit this cheap, Britain could indulge in its national sport, spending like there was no tomorrow.
One of my first acts at the Treasury was to make Tomorrow Never Comes a key part of our economic strategy. But it was glossed over in the excitement about an independent Bank of England.
But now tomorrow's here, and it's brought some sobering figures. While earnings have risen by less than a third since 2000, the amount of money we owe as individuals,
as opposed to the amount you owe as part of the national debt,
has more than doubled to a staggering £1.4 trillion. This means that, on average, every adult in the United Kingdom owes £26,000 on their mortgage and a further £5,000 on their credit card. And as half of us don't have mortgages, the burden of debt for the rest that do is much higher. The result of all this borrowing is that not only have we run down our pensions and savings, but we now have unprecedented levels of debt and insolvency. Yes, so far from being a wise strategy, leaving pensions in the lap of the stock market was a bit like relying on a forgetful monkey to pack an uneaten banana in your lunchbox. But at least we can rely on the government to have behaved sensibly.
well, of course, Prudence is my middle name.
And yet, as it turns out, the government is also in debt, by even more than we are.
No, actually, if you take away the figures for PFI and the pensions and the bank bailout, it comes down to a much more manageable £28.36.
The national debt officially stands at £645 billion. There it is there, up to 645. But that's a Conservative estimate, Conservative with a small c being a government figure. The Conservatives with a big C put the real size of our national debt at £1.85 trillion, even more than we already owe as individuals.
No, that's cheating. That's if you include PFI and pensions and Network Rail and Bradford and Bingley. We don't include those in the figures.
But isn't that cheating?
No more boom and bust!
In fact, if you include bailing out the banks last month...
Which we don't.
The total comes to more than £2.3 trillion. There it is up there. That's over 1.5 times what the whole country earns in a year. That's over £96,000 for every household. So it seems that under a prudent Chancellor, we've accumulated the largest debt in our history.
Ka-ching! January 2007, we hit £500 billion for the first time ever, a record. And it's carried on going up since then. Imagine how bad it could have been if I hadn't been prudent.
Feeling the pinch? Anxious about inflation? Public services? Bank bailouts? Trident? War? Pensions all piling in? Why not consolidate all your liabilities into just one huge amount and settle it the easy way, in 52 weekly payments? Chancellor's debt keeps us in credit, even if it leaves you penniless.
So who do we owe this debt to? Well, it's the debt the government has accumulated over the years and includes stuff that it's bought that it can't afford yet.
Now I wondered when we'd come to that. What's PFI? Well, Hugh, it depends who you talk to. According to the Treasury, it's a way of getting spending off the balance sheet. According to the National Audit Office, it's pseudo-scientific mumbo-jumbo where the financial modelling takes over from thinking. According to Edward Lee, chair of the Public Accounts Committee, it's the unacceptable face of capitalism. In any case, the P stands for patently, the I for idiotic, and I think you can probably guess what the F stands for.
Afraid I can't. For Gordon Brown, PFI was just what he needed. In 1997, he announced his golden rule of not borrowing more than 40% of GDP in any economic cycle. But faced with the need to rebuild Britain's crumbling infrastructure of schools and hospitals, he couldn't do it without breaking his rule.
The important thing is I won't break rules. I'll bend rules, hide them, pretend I've lost them, bury them, powder them, stamp on them, melt the rules down and recast them into a different rule, put them in a picture frame and pretend they're bits of art, kidnap them and demand a ransom from myself for them, run rules over in my car and reverse back over them to make sure they've been properly squished. But I will not break them.
So having tried all those methods, unsuccessfully, he found a way to get round it. A way that had been invented by Norman Lamont, the man who also came up with Black Wednesday.
Today has been an extremely difficult and turbulent day.
It allowed Tony Blair to boast of the success of apparently building hospitals on time and under budget.
New schools, new trust schools, new city academies. New hospitals, new Queen Elizabeth Hospital, new school building where I laid the foundation stone. The new academy in Liverpool, more secondary schools, more primary schools. So why and how? It was me. I spoke to a woman the other day, she said, I'd actually like to say something very simple. Thank you. It was you that gave the British people all that we've achieved, Prime Minister. So thank you, thank you. You are a remarkable man, a remarkable servant to this country. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank me, Prime Minister.
But the cost wasn't met out of that year's budget. Instead, it remained to be paid for years to come.
OK, let me get this straight. You'd like to build the new Forth Road Bridge, and you're going to charge me more than it costs to build the most expensive bridge anywhere in the world. I like the sound of that.
So now in polls, 80% of the public were against it. 80%. Well, that's only because they didn't understand it. If they did, 100% would be against it. But a lot of schools and hospitals had no choice. I mean, they were told by Alan Milburn, smarmy git, never liked him, they were told it's PFI or bust. Well, he was wrong. They got both.
OK, let me tell you where I'm at. You want me to let you build and run a hospital trust, with all that entails. But you've never run anything like that before.
OK, I'm in.
So who benefits? Well, Hugh, the public get their hospital or their school, and it'll be their children who are left with a bill. But the investors do very well indeed.
Oh, go on, Bob, give us an example.
Well, Hugh, if you put in just £100 at the start of the Hare Myers Hospital contract in Scotland, you stand to make a profit of £89 million over the next 30 years.
Golly, so who gets that?
The investors, either individuals or consortia. But just imagine, Hugh, if the government had sold bonds to pension funds to finance those PFI schemes and reap the profit for future pensions.
Brilliant. Have they done that?
No.
Oh, no, that really would have been prudent.
Look, I know it's easy to say that the private sector has profited hugely through a combination of consumer borrowing and public spending.